Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff revisits the car wash, and Tom goes on a rant about telekinesis. Plus, we answer questions from the mailbag about our questions from the mailbag and whether or not Tom and I are friends in real life. And then it's a practically perfect point to present our top 10 games that start with the letter P. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Peter Porker of board gaming, Tom Vassell. Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you, and from the OP, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 661.
P is for Pontificate.
Oh.
You think I sound like John Mulaney? Actually, I probably don't sound too far off from him.
I did not realize that was John Mulaney until just recently. Like, I was like, oh, that's an interesting voice for Peter Porker in Into the Spider-Verse, but like somebody mentioned it. Oh, yeah, John Mulaney's the voice of Peter Porker. I went, wait, what? I love John Mulaney. No wonder I liked Peter Porker so much. I have to go back and watch that movie.
Yeah, he did a lot of, there's a lot of interviews and stuff where he talks about it and everything. So, yeah, and by the way, folks, if you're listening to this podcast and you have not yet seen Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, it is one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. And I'm including the live-action movies in there.
It's excellently done. Very, very well done.
It is. I will say, if you're like me, just be warned. The first time I started watching it, I said, is this a 3D movie? And I'm not wearing the glasses. I was a little confused because they use comic pixelation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it. Comics pointillism.
It has a very
a little bit in the movie.
A definite artistic style to it. It uses the medium to its maximum, which is very cool once you get used to it.
Right. It takes like a minute, and I'm like, oh, it's not a 3D movie. Okay, my eyes are fine. And then I really enjoyed it. And also, I mean, they nailed the comics, I thought. And honestly, they nailed it in ways I didn't think they could pull it off. Like, for example, we mentioned Peter Porker should not work. It should be stupid. It should be Simpson-esque. And yet it was okay.
Yeah. Yep. So you reacted to that very, very differently. I was all ready to go when you're like, I'm Peter Porker. I was going to say, oh, that was a typo. But you embraced it. So kudos, sir.
Well, I really like I said, I really like that movie. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. I have liked, I might get some heat for this, but I have liked all the Spider-Man movies.
Even Spider-Man 3.
Well, here's the thing. I think Spider-Man 3 has aged poorly. I just watched it recently, and the special effects are quite poor, and there's a lot of stupid things in it, for sure.
A lot of stupid things in it.
But I really like Sandman. I thought the character nailed him.
Okay.
How I would think he acted. I thought his powers were cool. And I also liked the Green Goblin arc in it, other than the servant being dumb and not telling him that, the information that would have saved everyone a whole lot of trouble. So I liked that part of it. The Venom was not good, for sure. And I didn't hate the dance sequence in the middle like everybody else did, because I thought it was supposed to be bad. He was a symbiote, so of course he was stupid. But anyway, yes, I think that one has aged the worst of the Spider-Man movies, but I still like Spider-Man. To me, he's my favorite, one of my favorite superheroes, and I'm just glad to see him on screen.
So welcome to our film and comic book podcast. I'm Eric Summerer.
You started it by talking about...
I know. I did.
Yeah, I love talking about comics. You get me going on that one, and I'm going to be there all day. So, yeah, folks, this is about board games, though, and there's not many or any. I'm trying to think of a good Spider-Man board game. Spider-Man shows up in a few good board games, but there's no, I think, good board game specifically about Spider-Man.
Not that I know of. The web mechanic would be kind of cool for transportation and attacking and stuff.
All right, well, you know what? Let me rant for a second here.
Oh, yes, please.
This is one thing that has always bugged me about superheroes in general. And someone needs to send me an email or post on our Facebook group or something and explain this to me.
Okay.
So let's say I get a superpower. So Spider-Man can shoot webs. Great.
Yep.
Well, I know. And sometimes they're just web cartridges on his wrist or whatever. It depends which version of Spider-Man you're watching. But he can do all these things. He has spider sense and things. Or the one that really bugs me is someone gets telepathy. They can pick things up with their mind.
Okay.
But what always boggles my mind about this is someone gets telepathy, they pick up like an alarm clock, and then with their mind, they take it all apart, all the little pieces, and you see this really cool sequence there, right? I couldn't take the alarm clock apart like that with my hands. Not only do they get telepathy, but they are manipulating more things than your human mind could actually manipulate. Like most of us, we can manipulate maybe, if we use both our hands and like one of our feet. Like if you've ever drummed before, when you start learning to drum, you have to tap your foot sometimes a different beat to your hands, and that takes a bit to learn because you're using a third thing suddenly. And when you drive, there's similar things to that. To be able to do 100 things at once, that's a superpower in of itself. And yet every superhero has that innately. So Peter Parker can shoot a web at a building and know it's going to hit a point that's going to swing him down to a very level where he won't hit the street. And he's doing all this stuff automatically. That has always bugged me because, yes, it would be very boring to watch them smash into stuff all the time.
But it's a funny training montage.
Get good.
Usually in the origin stories, you get to see them like slamming into things and making mistakes, and that's fun.
Sure, but they would also make mistakes even after they got good, because there's just you can't factor in all that stuff. When you're driving and a bird comes across, you know what I mean? There's more factors, and airplanes don't fly low for that same reason. You can't factor in all that stuff. This has nothing to do with board games. We're going to get so much negative feedback about this. Sorry, everybody. Okay, board games. So this is 2020.
So it is.
This is the year of no conventions, or very few conventions. We'll see. But most of the conventions have been canceled, including Dice Tower East, which we're very sad about. But we did not talk about this last time we recorded, so we can this time. We have teamed up with Board Game Geek for a virtual con, which is innovatively titled Virtual Con with Board Game Geek and Dice Tower.
Yes.
But I'm really excited about this because this is... I'll admit, I was really dubious about the whole virtual con thing. It's just not going to be the same thing. And it can't be, right? You just can't get that same thing. But you want to get as close as you want to. People go to conventions for a few things. One, to see the spectacle. Can't really do that online, although we can show games off and things. Like, we can play games. And so sometimes you go to demo games and buy them from publishers, and that can be done online. But the main reason a lot of people go to cons is to play games, open gaming with other people. And so that's what this is going to be. Board Game Geek will have a website that we'll be able to use where you'll be able to go on there and you will be able to just look at listed games and list your own. Just pick an event and put a game there. So you might be able to put, hey, I'm going to play Cosmic Encounter on Tabletop Simulator. I'm going to do this game on Tabletopia. I'm going to play this game on the iOS. I'm just going to play a party game on Zoom. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want. There's going to be a Discord chat set up where you can go in and maybe just pick up games. But what I've always found is when I go to these websites, so let's say I go to Tabletopia, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play a game with people. I've kind of just stand around awkwardly. I'm like, who wants to play a game?
Yep.
And it might not work. Sometimes you feel like you're shouting into the ether. But this way, everyone's there at the same time, and you're walking, and you're going to find other people. Everybody who was signed up for Board Game Geek Spring and for Dice Tower East is coming to this for free, and the whole Dice Tower staff's going to be there, and then everyone else can join. There will be a fee. It may be announced by the time this podcast is publicized. I don't know yet because they're still working on that. But that will be online. But then you do that, and you go in, and for like 5 straight days, you just go in there and play games with people. And I'm really looking forward to it. The Dice Tower, we're going to stop producing video content during that time, and we're just going to go in there and we're going to play games with people.
Cool.
And Eric will show up at some point.
I'm making
him play at least one game.
At least one, yes.
He'll narrate a book at the same time.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
I don't think you could do that. You have to.
No.
Have you ever found yourself narrating a book and your mind wanders? I'm assuming you have to re-record it.
Yeah. I mean, there is the concept of getting into the zone where suddenly I'm just sort of talking and my mind will wander, and I suddenly look at the page and I'm a whole 2 or 3 paragraphs farther. I don't remember saying any of that. It's like driving when suddenly you're home and you don't remember leaving work. It's that sort of feeling.
Sure, but That's not. I assume that that's not necessarily good for the recording.
It probably doesn't have the most passion, but depending on the material, it could be fine.
That's true. That's true. Eric is just that good. But yeah, so anyway, that's coming up. It's at the end of June. So go online, check it out. We have it in our Facebook group. It'll be mentioned in our Board Game Geek thing. It's on Board Game. It's on Board Game Geek itself. So, and if you still can't find it, email me at tom@dicetower.com and I will point you to the right place. We're going to put videos up on how to use the different programs that are out there. And Tabletopia, which has a cost to play many of the games, is making all their games and everything free during that week for anyone involved with this.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm thinking about running a werewolf game with Zoom. I think that'd be fun. I'm going to do some sort of game show in there. Maybe sneak a game of Cosmic Encounter, something like that. So I'm pumped about the whole thing.
All right.
Then the week after that, the first week of July, where Dice Tower East is, we're going to have the Dice Tower Spectacular.
Spectacular.
So actually, I think it's called Summer Spectacular.
Summer.
So in this, for 5 days straight, we're going to have lots of content for you. We're going to show some new games that you have not seen before from different companies. And we're going to do 5 video live top 10 lists, including the return of Sam Healy. We have Crystal and Paula Deming are going to come on board and do a top 10. We have Efka and Elaine from No Pun Included. And we have the very famous, illustrious man who can read a book without thinking about it, Eric Summerer.
Yes, top 10 books I can read without thinking about it.
That's the topic. Me, Mandy, and Suzanne are going to be like, wow, we don't know what to say here. So anyhow, I'm excited about that. It's going to be a good time. And that's not all. We're going to also do the Dice Tower Awards. We'll have those out there. We have a special announcement. Something is going to change slightly about the Dice Tower.
What?
That will make you both say, what? And also, obviously.
Oh, yeah. You teased this before, and I still don't know what you're talking about. But I look forward to that.
You do know what I'm talking about because I've talked to you about this. You're one of like 5 people who knows.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Or will I have to explain it to you after the show?
You're going to have to tell me. I was reading a book while you were saying it.
It involves a particular person. Does that narrow it down?
Maybe.
No. All right. Anyhow. Okay. People will speculate out the wazoo. But all right. So that stuff coming up. I'm excited about that. And we're going to be working hard all year round, folks. So we are going to have different things. By the way, I'm going to come back to a second. Somewhere in the show, we'll announce the winners of our contest. But
somewhere in the show, when you least expect it, we're going to be in the middle of the top 10, number 2, and the winner is.
That could happen. But anyway, one of the feedbacks we got quite a bit of was many, many people do not like the live shows because we just have a hard time recording them. I mean, we're kind of at the mercy of the convention equipment and stuff. Well, good news.
We don't have any of those this year?
There will be none of those this year. But we're going to still record stuff. In fact, Eric, you need to remind me, I need to go in there and fix the schedule because I have all those shows scheduled.
Oh.
So
okay.
we need to change those out. But yeah, so that is something. And we also realize that, we're not going to have the convention coverage where Eric and I say, hey, this is the new stuff we saw at Gen Con. But we're still going to have that stuff. The publishers have been in contact with us. They want us to talk about their upcoming games. So don't worry about that. We're going to be able to talk to you throughout the course of the year.
Cool.
With that being said, we talked a lot about not games. So let's start with games. And Eric, I want to hear about this. I'm very excited to hear your story here.
Ah, yes. So I mentioned briefly that I had gotten a chance to play adventure games The Dungeon, the first part of this at Dice Tower West a few months ago. But I started over and played this with my kids. This is the new line from Cosmos Games, which it really emulates the point-and-click adventure game style of things.
Yes.
You sort of build a map. You start out with one location card, and it's got little numbers on it, and eventually you'll spread out and sort of create a map. You are individual characters with some sort of identity to them, and on your turn, you will move anywhere that you have access to. So there's no movement restrictions. If you have a big sprawling map, you can run all the way across the map and then you can take a turn. And that's simply looking at something on the map, combining a couple of items that you're holding in your hand, or using one of your items on one of those locations on the board. And all of that involves adding numbers together and looking them up in sort of an adventure book. And if those two things can work together, or if that object is something you can look at, you get a paragraph that you then get more options, or get items, or get information, or nothing happens, or you get hurt in the case of...
Wait, you didn't play with the app?
I did not play with the app. I should play with the app.
I was really, because the app, you can just type the number in, and it will read this passage to you. It wasn't available when I played it, so I wanted to know how that went.
So my default is put text in front of me and I will read it. So I didn't even consider going to the app.
Yeah, but here's the good thing about the app is that, let's say you're trying to combine, let's say there's 3 bowls on there, and you got to throw a marble into one, and the marble's 17, and the bowls are 20, 21, and 22. If I go to 1720, my eyes might see what 1721 does.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The app will stop that from happening.
There is that slight possibility, and especially with some of the more complicated numbers, like when it's 601, 642, 653, like that's almost too much information for me to process the similar ones. But when you get like several items that are similar, or sometimes you have to combine 3 different cards, and that's going to be a 6-digit number, and there are only so many 6-digit numbers in the book, so it becomes obvious which ones are valid and which ones aren't. So you certainly have a point there, Tom. My children and I played all the way through all 3 parts of the adventure, and was surprised to find out that there are multiple endings to this adventure, and a good number of things that you can pass by. Like, you can advance the story, but miss some little side quests, for lack of a better term, which is kind of cool. It almost necessitates another play, or at least us going back. We did sort of rewind and say, all right, so if we had done this in this room before we did option B, what would have happened? And we sort of tracked it as if we had followed that path to figure out what happened. But you could, in theory, play these again to try and get a different ending, which is kind of cool.
Well, we got an incredibly entertaining cinematic ending. It was like very exciting.
Yeah, we didn't get that on the first play. We got a mildly successful ending, but it was not the epic one that you could if you managed to unlock everything. And that's the one we went back and read. But
what did the kids think of it?
The kids loved it. My youngest especially really, really enjoyed it. He just really liked, he wanted to collect all the stuff. The restrictions on handing items to each other is very loose in this game. If I found something, like I found a ruby, and he's like, I want that. On his turn, he's like, I'm going to hold that now. So
he's the rogue.
He just kept stealing everything.
Loot the treasure chest.
Or anytime I was like, I would figure out a puzzle, like, we need to combine these 2 items. This is exactly what I need. He's like, I want those 2 items. I'm going to combine them. And sometimes he got hurt doing so, which was fun.
That's true.
But
in this game,
it.
be warned, you can't die or anything.
It's scoring, mild. Basically. The only other adventure in this series that's out right now is, what's it called? Monochrome Ink. It has the higher, we've discussed before, it has a higher age limit on it. And you said, Tom, it's just because of darker themes in the story. I'm considering letting him play it, and I'll just censor anything in the text that happens to come up that I don't think he wants to hear. Because he wants to play it.
I think you could easily do that. Just, if it said, for example, you see a dead guy in a corner, you could make it softer or whatever.
Yeah, maybe not be so detailed.
It's not that gross or anything.
Okay.
I don't think it's as fun as the dungeon, frankly.
Really?
And I really wish they had called the Adventure Games Dungeon something else. It's such a boring name.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I cannot tell you how excited I am about new ones in this series, because I like the escape room games, and from Cosmos, they're the exit games, right? The exit games are great and all, but the story, there's not a strong storyline in them. And this one, it was a great, fun, rollicking story with characters you meet. And it gives you that whole sense where you go through a bunch of rooms and you find something, you're like, wait a minute, we saw this way back at the very beginning.
Yeah. It has a real sense of place and person and adventure in the whole thing. And it was really a solid win for the kids, and that has me wanting to ignore the age restriction on this other one and play that with the 8-year-old as well. He's almost 9, so he'll be 9 next week.
Oh, well, my kids were 9. They were playing Kalis. Anyhow.
Yes. Anyway, Adventure Games The Dungeon, huge thumbs up. I want to see more from this system. Please, Cosmos, thank you.
Yes, and Eric mentioned it breaks into 3 parts. How long did you play, you think?
It says on the box 90 minutes. I do not think it was that long. It was under an hour for each section. We split it up. We did it like one a night. So about an hour, I think, for each chapter.
Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable. I think maybe one of the chapters we got done faster than an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, that came and the breaks are well done, I thought. They were good points to stop.
They are. It's major plot twists, and it's very simple to pack up. You basically just all the cards you've unlocked you can put in a stack, and it
I will say though,
everything.
if you're in this game to look for those puzzles and exit, there's a few of that sort of thing going on in this game, but they're really easy. I thought.
Yeah, it was not. We never felt
but they were great
stuck.
for kids.
Yeah, we didn't feel stuck at like, what are we supposed to do here? It was more, well, let's explore here. The sense of exploration was more the highlight than it was, I'm stumped. How in the world are we going to solve this puzzle? If that makes sense.
Right. There is a clue system of sorts that you can use.
There is. We never used it. We managed to figure out. I mean, we didn't unlock everything. We skipped a couple of plot threads, but we never felt like, what in the world are we supposed to do with this? To the point where we had to look up the clue.
Yeah. I want to do a brief shout out here. We are continuing, me and my kids, to play through The Rise of Queensdale. They are still anxious. That's very interesting because I'll pull it out. Everyone's excited. We play it. I'm like, hey, you want to play a second game? Nope. So we pack it all up. Next time, they're excited to play it again. They're very content to play one game at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm not used to doing that with legacy games. So
You want to play 2 in a row.
Well, I mean, I'm like, all that setup and all that takedown? Come on, it's set up. Let's just...
I'm in the same situation with Machikoro Legacy, which I haven't really talked about here on the show because I want to finish first, but we're in the middle. I think we're on game 5 at this point. The kids will play one game and they're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, but we have it out. It's not that long. We could just do it again. No, I'm good.
I think the answer is that both these games, while they're fun, have a lot of repetitive things in them, which is really good for the time frame that it's at. But if you double that, it's...
Yeah.
You know what? Actually... let's bring this up again after Game Tech, because this actually has something to do with that.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to quick mention, Eric talked about this, I don't know if it was last episode, maybe the episode before, the alpha.
Yeah.
And Eric gave it a scathingly bad review. Basically by saying meh, which as we all know for Eric is like just pouring gasoline and lighting it on fire.
Uh-huh.
It was just horrific. So I wasn't sure what to think of it. I went into it with pretty low expectations because it's from Bicycle, and I just didn't assume that Bicycle would make good games. You know, they're not new to the gaming world. They've been making great playing cards forever, but games. The production quality is astounding for this company.
Yeah, it's solid.
Oh man,
yeah,
it's something. I can see why people would not like the alpha, but in the alpha, which just as a quick reminder. It's a kind of an area control game. You take turns placing your wolves out on different animals out there, and whoever has the most wolves will win it. And if there's a tie, which there will be almost every turn, you then have a prisoner's dilemma situation where you can share the loot or try to fight and get it, and it might be no one gets it.
Yeah.
And I played this with the kids, and it was easily one of the most fun events we've done in the past year.
Okay.
So a few problems I ran into. One, I did not lie one time over the course of the game. And yet still at the end, I was being accused. I was not believed. I said, what on earth here? Do I lie to you on a daily basis as your father? No. Have I lied over the course of this game? No. Do you consider me generally a lying person? No. Then why don't you believe me? We just don't. They lied to each other so much.
Yep.
They were so cutthroat and they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved being cutthroat to each other.
Yeah, I think that's the emphasis here is that prisoner's dilemma part is the real key to this game.
Well, there's two things. There's the prisoner's dilemma, then there's also that whole push your luck aspect. So I was cut out from everything, and the kids just whooped up at me. But I kept going to this one animal. I forget what animal it is, it's the farmer's animal.
The livestock, yeah.
You go there, the livestock. You can get 12 food there, 12 points essentially. Yeah. But there's a 50% chance the farmer will shoot you dead.
Yep.
And you actually lose that worker for the rest of the game.
It's gone.
So that happened to me twice.
Yes, you and I had the same game. Yeah.
On the final turn, I said, I'm going to go there. And I managed to get the biggest buffalo out there.
Oh.
And so I went for the livestock and I rolled a 12, which put me into third place. And then it came time to roll for the buffalo. And if I rolled a 20, I would win the game.
Okay.
I did not roll 20. All right. But the opportunity was there, and it was a stand-up moment.
Okay.
Right? Everyone, I stood up, I shook the die, we all got excited. The kids were, it was such a grand ending to the game. And I'm telling you, it was just so much fun across the board.
Okay.
I get that gamers would probably not like it, but I think for non-gamers, we're not non-gamers. That sounds muggle-esque speaking. I don't mean it that way.
No.
But this is a game I could buy for people, and I think they would enjoy. Prisoner Dilemma, I find to be, in real life, I find it a horrific thing. That game show that used the Prisoner's Dilemma, I hated it. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah, it was British, right? Or did we actually get a version over here?
It came to America, and they did like a season of it, and I just hated it.
Yeah.
Because people would be nice, and the other person would lie and steal all their stuff, and I couldn't stand that.
Yep.
In a shorter game like this, where it happens 20 times over the course of the game, I find it less problematic. It's less hurtful. You're like, what? Why you? And you just keep going.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I just want to say I really enjoyed the alpha.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Bicycle is building these as their light strategy games, so they're definitely going for that much more casual market. This isn't supposed to be deep strategy, and I think they're hitting that particular sweet spot. It just isn't necessarily where I want to see it. But
I really want to play Eric in this game now just so I could lie to him, and then my kids will be like, "We knew it!
Evidence!
We knew you lied." I'm like, "But not to you, only to other adults." I am going to lie to him. I'm just saving it up. I'm going to get him one day.
So I had the opportunity to play a game of Tiny Towns in a live stream with the folks from AEG a couple of weeks ago. I had played at a game day several months ago, but this was my first time playing with sharks, playing with the designer and a bunch of folks from the company. They definitely knew what they were doing, and I did not win. I'll just say that right off the bat. Tiny Towns is this neat little, just sort of small footprint game where you have a 4x4 grid, and you will periodically put cubes out onto the grid. And there's two ways to play. You can either play with a deck of cards where you flip a card and it says wheat, and you have to take a wheat cube and put it on your board. Or you pass around a hammer, and each player decides what the next resource is going to be. So you can sort of look around and go, I need metal, and you guys don't, so I'm going to do metal this round. But either way, you then have a cube and you have to put it somewhere on your board. And if you manage to get these cubes to arrange in a way that represents one of the seven or eight buildings in the course of the game, then you can collapse those resources, turn them in, and take one of those spaces that was occupied and put a building on it. And each of the buildings, there's like a random draw at the beginning of every game with different powers. Some of them are like farms that will feed other buildings, and some are warehouses that will store resources. There's even a single special building that you can build once over the course of the game that has end-game scoring conditions and adjacency rules and all sorts of cool stuff. But the key is leaving enough space on your board to be able to continue to place cubes out and continue to place buildings, because as soon as you can't place buildings anymore, when you fill up your board, you're done, and you score your own board, and most points wins. It is one of those that the mechanisms are very simple, but getting good at it is trickier than it looks, and that is a nice mark of a solid game. Tiny Towns is a good one, and I need to play this one with the kids. Now that I've swum with the sharks, I feel like I need to win a game at some point. But now that I think about it, the last time I played before playing with the sharks, my son beat me. So never mind that. Tiny Towns.
You're just not very good at games.
I'm terrible at games. That's what's happening at this point. I won the adventure games. It was cooperative, but I was among the winners. Tiny Towns. Thumbs up.
All right, it's time to talk about amazement now.
Ooh.
All right. So first, I want to talk about a game from Gil Hova, who, if you ever run into him at a convention or anywhere in your life in the past 2.5 years, he will talk to you about the networks consistently. Networks.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. However, he now has a new game called High Rise. This is a game in which you are building giant skyscrapers in the middle of the board. The board itself is a giant rondel of sorts. On your turn, you can move. The person who's in the back moves around the board as far as you want to. And then the next person who's in the back moves forward. So if you move really far, it's going to be a while before you get to go again.
Right.
And you're moving around the board, grabbing different colored floors that you're trying to get different collections of colors to turn those in to build towers. You build these towers on the board, which will give you points when you build them. Also, if you have the tallest towers in different neighborhoods, you'll score points after each scoring round. Also, if someone lands on a tower, it usually gives them some sort of cool special ability. And if you own the tower, that when they land there, you get to draw another floor from the bag. There's bonuses, wild floors, special abilities, spires you can add to make your towers taller. I love this game. It is so good. Now, to be fair, I love this mechanism. It's one of my favorite things in the world, where it move as far ahead as you want.
Yeah.
But but then you might, you might wait for a while before it's your turn.
Yep.
And it's such a tough decision. It will, like, there's these bonus things on the board, and the first person to cross them gets to take one. So you're like, oh, I'm going to zoom up and grab the bonuses. But then I'm letting, Eric, who's behind me, he's just going to take his good old time. He's going to be irritated. He didn't get that bonus, but he's going to get to go to 2 spaces before I move again. And visually, this is a really good-looking game. Gil did a fantastic job at it. I will say I was a little worried about it because the rule book is huge. And on the box, it said something like it went to 2 hours, but if you're playing the advanced game, up to 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, my word. What am I getting into? But I will say this. There's 3 games, the beginner, I think there's the introductory, normal, and then full game, something like that. And the difference between a normal and the full game is you go around the board 3 times in the full game. You only go around it twice in the normal game. And I'll tell you, going around the board twice to me is fine.
Okay.
Especially since if you go around the 3rd time, it's not an extra time. It's like a pre-time. You start when the buildings are smaller.
Oh, okay.
And so if you start the normal game, everyone starts with 1 building already on the board. Yes, you would probably get 2 buildings on the board, maybe 3 if you went around the board an extra time. I don't think it's worth adding an extra hour to the game.
All right.
You know what I mean? It's there. You can add that extra time. I mean, if you want to do it, go for it. I'm not saying it's bad. I just thought I thought it was a good, solid 2-player game. I mean, I'm sorry, 2-hour game. You could play, I think, 2 to 4 players. But it's I don't know if you like this mechanism. It's
yeah.
Used
Nova Luna is the last one that I've played that uses that as well, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, Nova Luna is more abstracted in that regard. I mean, yes, I didn't feel like Nova Luna. To me, Nova Luna wasn't as deep as this game is. What's the one that they just did a
Glenmore
reprint of? Glenmore.
Yeah, Glenmore 2.
Glenmore does it. In fact, the first game I ever played in my life that does this, I can't pronounce it, but it's King Tut. What's his full name?
Tutankhamun?
Yes, Tutankhamun. This game from Out of the Box Publishing, it was the first one I ever played that had this, and they're reprinting that. So I'm very excited.
Oh.
Anyway, the game I'm actually talking about, though, here is called High Rise, and this is from Formal Ferret Games.
Cool.
Excellent.
So on this program, I've talked occasionally about the Parsley system of games, and this is where you have one player that acts as the text parser, sort of running the game, and everyone else at the table is the player, and they must give commands to the parser, and you're stuck in some sort of text adventure that you must complete. In fact, if you tuned into Dice Tower tonight, this past week, Crystal and I did a short adventure from the recent Kickstarter hardcover edition of Parsley. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that Action Castle 4 just came out. You can get it as a PDF for like $5 on the Memento Mori website. And run this with your friends and family. And this is a great idea for playing like over Zoom or Skype in a video call when we're all trying to do social distant gaming events. I played this one with my kids, and we were immediately excited about it. And then my son wanted to run as the parser, even though I already knew how to get through the adventure. So it was almost more of an activity as well, but it's really cool to play a new Parsley adventure, and if you're interested, you can get it now. Action Castle 4. The Foreigning.
What a stupid name. But all right.
That's not the subtitle. It's just Action Castle 4.
Someday, Eric, when we're together, you're going to have to show me how these work.
Okay.
Because I'm still having a hard time grasping in my head how it happens.
Yeah.
You know. But I mean, I would try it.
Maybe I'll run one for one of these virtual con events. That might be a good idea.
Oh, you can play it virtually?
Well, sure. You know, if you could, as long as we can see each other. So when we played this for Dice Tower tonight, we tried to use the chat as well as the live participants, and there was a delay because the chat would see things 20, 30 seconds before they could comment on it, and that slowed things down. But if you're just face to face, you could easily just go down the line. It's Tom's turn, now it's Mandy's turn, now it's Suzanne's turn, and I'll just give commands back every time you give a command. It would work very well, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the next one I'm going to talk about is a game from Funkoverse. So Funkoverse, when we come back in 2 weeks, I'll talk about some more of the Funkoverse games. Funkoverse has released a pile of stuff. They have the newest things for the Funkoverse game itself. I don't know if you saw this, but you played the Funkoverse.
I have.
Game.
Is this Jaws? I think that's the latest thing I saw.
So there's Jaws, which is fantastic because he just goes underneath the floor and then just comes out and eats people.
Oh boy.
And then they also added the Back to the Future. So I almost said Rick and Morty, but it's not Rick and Morty. It's Doc Brown and Marty.
Yes.
So they added those two, so that's fun. But they also added some other games, Pan Am. They have a Godzilla board game. And then Back to the Future, Back in Time. Back to the Future, Back in Time, which is designed by the Prospero Hall team, which is owned by Funkoverse at this point in time. Mm-hmm. I should say Funko Pops. Funkoverse is the game. Sorry, right. Funko is the name of the company. Anyhow, Back to the Future, Back in Time is a game, it's a cooperative game. And in it, you're going to play one of four characters. You play Doc Brown, Marty, his girlfriend, Jennifer, or the dog, Einstein.
Einstein, okay.
All right. Yeah, well, they kind of shoehorn the dog in there, but you need four players.
All right.
So what Back to the Future, Back in Time does is it takes time travel completely out of this. There's no time travel in this game.
What?
You're in the 50s.
Okay.
Well, you're stuck in the 50s, and you're trying to get out, right? So what you need to do as a group is you need to get the DeLorean to zoom down the street next to the clock tower.
Okay.
At the end of the game, which is 10:04, whatever, the exact time. And you also need to make sure George and Elaine are in love. The game is going to end after a certain number of turns. It's going to be 10:04. And if the DeLorean's in the right space and George and Lorraine are in love, then you win the game. However, there's a picture that's made up of 6 tiles. And as the game goes by, these tiles will flip over.
Yeah.
Making Marty and his brother and sister disappear.
Nice.
And if they all get flipped over, as a group, you lose.
Nice.
So what you do on your turn is there's usually some sort of bad thing that will happen. You'll turn over, there will be a listing underneath the turn marker, what happens. And sometimes it will bring out a bad event on the board, which is usually Biff and his gang doing something. And then it will move Lorraine and George. They just kind of move in different directions around the board. The board's kind of a big clockwise thing, and in the middle is the park. You can run through that. And then it will also move Biff. And Biff is constantly going towards George or Lorraine. He's tormenting George or trying to make out with Lorraine. He's just he moves towards the nearest one. If he's already with one of them, then if each time you see a Biff symbol, then he makes their love for each other go down. And remember, you need to keep this love up. You need to keep their love up. So that will happen at the beginning of your turn. Then you will decide what you're going to do. Each player starts with 5 tiles, and you can flip these tiles to move, or you can flip them to roll dice for a challenge. And there are different challenges that you need to do. You need to go to where the DeLorean is and roll a challenge to move it. You need to go to George and Lorraine. You got to get them together. So when you move, you can drag one of them with you to get to the other person. And then you can do a challenge to help them fall in love more. You can also go around the board. There's the little objectives, like little tests, like, oh, go help George find his comic book or whatever it is. And you can do these tests. And then there's trouble, Biff and the gang, these tiles around the board. You can go try to solve those. You also need to go find all 3 parts for the DeLorean. You need to find a power cable and, a flux capacitor, whatever they are.
Right.
Go around and get those. And you can also go beat up Biff. So, because if you beat Biff up, you basically knock him down and you can put some dazed tokens on him. And that takes him out. He doesn't move for a while. Whenever you make a test, you roll different colored dice depending on the tiles you flip over. So, like I was playing, let's see, last game I played Jennifer. So she had extra tiles with pink dice. Pink dice helped them fall in love. Every die has 6 sides to it. It has a symbol that matches a certain kind of test. Like the pink die has love on one side, and then on another side it has 2 love tokens. Then they have 2 wilds, so that even if I'm doing a love test, I could still use the yellow dice that help move the DeLorean.
Yep.
I could still use those, but it's less of a chance that they'll work. And then there's 2 Biff sides. When you roll those, Biff moves or messes with the love thing.
Okay. But
as the game progresses, when you go around and do these little weird objectives, like I said, help different things happen. I'm going to help, the guy who hurt his hand on the guitar, whatever. These different things. You get to draw more tiles. So you start with 5, but you can have up to 8 tiles. And the new tiles will give you 2 dice on them, or a wild die, or something that says you can re-roll the Biffs. Because you can re-roll dice as much as you want, but you have to keep every Biff that you roll.
Gotcha.
So you don't want to re-roll very much. And, and various, there's things will happen. The principal will show up, call everybody a slacker, and, send different people in different directions. And I have to say, this is an amazingly great game. The theme is so strong. Really cool components. It's great artwork. They drew everything. So it's not stills from the movie.
Okay.
They drew everything. It feels thematic. At the beginning I mentioned they took the time travel out, and that was such a good idea because time travel is hard to do in a board game. And this just focuses on, if you think about it, this is like 80% of the plot of Back to the Future anyway. They only jumped around in time a couple times in the movie.
Right, yeah.
Most of the movie's about making George and Lorraine fall in love, and that happens in this thing. And you find different items. Like sometimes you accomplish an objective and you'll get an item. Like you get the skateboard. Well, that helps you in movement. And, or helps you fight Biff. I forget one of the 2. There's these items do different things, and getting those tiles, it's such a clean, cool system. This game, to me, is the sequel to Horrified. I put it on the same level as Horrified.
Okay.
It's designed by the same team.
Yep.
It's not the same company, but it's designed by the same team. It has a very similar look to it. It's easy for people to get into, but challenging enough for gamers to play. And if you like Back to the Future, this is the first time I played a game about Back to the Future that actually felt like that was the movie. It made sense. It's so good, folks. You've got to get this one. I really like it.
Okay.
I don't know if you like Back to the Future, Eric. If you don't, you have bad taste in movies.
No, I really like Back to the Future. I'm interested. You've piqued my interest.
Yeah, so I think this is a Target exclusive for a while. And I think it's coming out. It might be out by the time this episode drops. It's like the beginning or the end of June, somewhere around those time frames. So keep an eye out for it, folks. It scales well. I guess you could, I don't know if I haven't tried it solo. I guess you could play a couple characters in solo. It's a co-op game. And every game's going to feel different because these different trouble spots that are going to show up on the board will be different each game. And the objectives, these things that you go around, those will be randomized. So you can't do the exact same thing. And then each character has a special power. Like Doc Martin can always move wherever the DeLorean is. He can move to that spot if he needs to. So I don't know. That's Back to the Future, Back in Time.
Cool.
All right. Well, speaking of time and going back, let's listen to Geoff.
on a subject that he talked about way back in 2011. It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
In 2004, researchers Joseph Nunes and Xavier Dries conducted an experiment at a California car wash. Now, I've talked about this experiment before here on Game Tech, but it was back in 2011, so I guess I can't be too upset if you don't recall it. And I want to take things in a slightly different direction, so for the benefit of those of you who missed that, here's a recap. The experiment went like this. Half the people who came to the car wash received a coupon with 8 spots. They were told that each time they came back and got a wash, they would get a spot punched, and once all 8 were complete, they would get a free wash. The other half of the people received a coupon that had 10 spots instead of 8, but 2 of them were already punched. So in both cases, the person needed to get 8 more car washes to get a free one. Then, the researchers sat back and tracked how many people redeemed each coupon. 18% of the people redeemed the coupon with 8 spots, but 35% redeemed the coupon with 2 spots pre-punched. That's a staggering result for this type of study. Basically, twice as many people redeemed the coupon with the starter punches, even though both needed 8 to complete it. The researchers call this the Endowed progress effect. Subsequent research showed that if people felt like they had taken a few steps along a journey, they were much more likely to continue on. They felt invested, like they had something to lose by abandoning the effort. Marketers latched onto this, and you now constantly receive free starter points for membership clubs or subject to similar techniques. And game designers have also used this techniques in a variety of ways. In Dungeons & Dragons, for example, when you earn experience points and go up a level, it is very rare that you hit the boundary exactly. Instead, you overshoot and already start on the way to the next level. The computer game Civilization uses this masterfully, with a technique that I have dubbed Staggered End Points. Civilization is a turn-based game, but the turns are very short. And critically, the duration of most things you want to do requires multiple turns. For example, research projects may take 10 turns to complete, a new building for your city may take 8 turns, moving your settler to found a city may take 12. As you get more cities and grow your civilization, you have more and more of these little projects running in parallel. But because they all end at different times, you always have some short-term goal that is in progress. Each of these goals in and of itself gives psychological impetus to the game, but having so many of them in different stages creates a compulsion, a palpable forward momentum that forces the players to continue on turn after turn. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I've played my share of board games where you're trying to achieve intermediate goals, acquire the resources to fulfill a contract or deliver a product to a destination. But once you complete the task, you get reset back to square one. You have to start again, building towards the next goal. I always find these moments in a game a letdown. You've worked multiple turns to put all the pieces into place, but when you do, like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up the hill, you feel like it has rolled back down and you're starting all over. Yes, some of these games give you a new ability that makes things feel a little bit different, but it's so much better when you're pursuing 2 goals at the same time and complete one, but already find yourself halfway to the next. Completing one goal and then having to start the next from scratch just feels very wash, rinse, repeat. The staggered endpoint technique with overlapping multiple projects is much more engaging. As a designer, avoid leaving your players with no progress toward their next objective. Make sure that they are always a few steps on the road to their goal. What are some of your favorite games that use this technique? And what games fall a bit flat because of their one goal at a time design? Drop by the Dice Tower Guild on Board Game Geek and let me know. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
See, this is what I was talking about, Eric, earlier, about the legacy games, is I think part of it is you, by the time you're done with a particular game, and this is in Queensdale, and it's the same way in the Machikoro one, you kind of got this cool thing going, like, and I don't know if I want to necessarily go back to 0 in the next game. Yeah. Like if you wait and you come back a day later, okay, fine, I'm at 0. But right here, it's like, oh, I'm so cool. Yeah. And not in the next game. Maybe that's what it is.
It is interesting because you've well, but also the alternative like what else could you do? You can't continue to grow in these games. These games end at like for Machikoro, you have been drafting your empire and you've got all this stuff and you're earning all sorts of income. And by the end of the game, you have a very powerful system going. You can't keep that for the beginning of the next game.
It's a very difficult thing for legacy games to pull that off. They have to reset you. What you can do is you get to keep some minor things, and that will help you feel cooler the next time you go in.
It is.
All the good ones let you keep minor things.
It is a very on the rails sort of progression for Machikoro Legacy. There's not a whole lot that you can do as far as actions that you take that then carry on to new games. There's a very limited mechanism, at least in the first half of the game. I don't know what else is going to happen. That then carries on to your next game. Almost everything progresses all together. All the players move forward together, and we'll be starting from that same square one each time.
Now, here's something I don't like. And I don't know if this is tangentially related. I was thinking about this today because, and Eric and I were talking about this a little bit off camera, about apps. And most people in the world play these free apps that you can pay money and get more stuff in.
This
right?
definitely uses this mechanism that Geoff was talking about.
Everyone dislikes these apps, and yet everyone plays at least one of them. I shouldn't say everybody. I know. I don't want to get comments. I don't play them. Fine. I get it. But
I play
a lot of people
some,
do.
Yeah.
I play one. So like one of the ones I play right now is a baseball one. It's really fun. You hit the ball and you try to hit it into different corners, and your players get better as the game goes by.
Okay.
But what I find about this game that I don't like is as I get better, they keep moving you to play against people who are the same level. Mm-hmm. So I never feel like I'm better.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how to fix that, right? I mean, I don't know that you desperately want to go into an area and you're like, puny insects. But here's the thing. I would like to be able to think that I could go into those if I want to. And there's a lot of these games that, let's say you start with $10 and you get $10 every day and you use that. And after a while you upgrade, you get $100. But they also upgrade everything else. So you never feel like you're getting better. I mean, you feel like you're getting better, but you're not. You're still like the same level as you were at the beginning.
It's very mathematical in its progression. And anytime you feel like you get strong, they then raise things very quickly so that you are always struggling.
That's why I like video games where the enemies don't necessarily level up with you, because you'll find this area and you're like, oh, wow, those guys could kill me if I just look at them, and you stay away from them. Mm-hmm. But later on, when you're good enough to fight those guys, you go back and where's that little orc village?
Yeah.
All right, everybody, line up. Remember when you all whooped up on me?
Yep.
Payback time.
Doesn't happen anymore.
Maybe I have some vengeance problems and I should probably see someone about that.
Just been playing a lot of Zelda, I think. But yes. Support for this podcast comes from The Op, presenting Blank Slate, the clever party game where you try to predict what others are thinking. It's for ages 8+ with 3 or more players, and it's available for pickup at your favorite toy or game shop or online. So the way the game works is that everyone secretly writes a word that completes a phrase on a cue card, and you have to choose your word carefully because you score the most points for matching words with only one other person. It's fun, it's easy to learn, and you get to think outside the box, but not too far, or you won't match words with anyone. The player with the most points wins. Who knows? If you get good enough at it, soon you might be finishing others'
sandwiches.
That's what I was going to say. Anyway, that's Blank Slate from The Op. Questions.
All right, our first question is from Richie, and he says he likes the YouTube channel, but he thinks the podcast with Tom and Eric is his favorite things.
Oh.
We have an easy camaraderie, and we're obviously good friends, although Tom needs to be nicer to Eric.
Yes.
First of all, we're not good friends, and I'm not going to be nicer to Eric. You know what? On this subject, let me quick go off here. I once listened to an interview with one of the guys from what's that show where they debunk stuff? Mythbusters.
Mythbusters, right? Yeah.
And they talked about the two main characters of that aren't friends at all. Like they only get together to do this show, and then they go off and do their different things. And they're cordial. Yeah. It's not like they're enemies, right? But they weren't friends. And that bugged me. Like, that still bugs me. Like, if I didn't want to hang out with Eric, I wouldn't want to do a show with him either. I get that, you work with people that you're not necessarily friends with, but with the podcast, we choose that.
Yeah.
It's not like when we go to a convention, I'm like, see you later, Eric. I don't want to talk to you the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's true. I know Penn and Teller have a similar relationship. I mean, they are professionals. When they need to work together, they work together. But when they are developing tricks and stuff, it's done almost entirely on their own. And they don't show each other until a trick is ready. It's not a collaborative design process. It's, I am working on this trick. I'm showing it to you. Is it good enough for the show? And that's their relationship.
Well, yeah, but do they still like hang out together and eat dinner together?
No.
I mean, I don't know if I like that.
No, they don't.
I don't like that. Oh man, that like ruins the magic for me too. A little bit.
We
anyhow.
do hang out together and eat together when I'm invited.
Yeah, when we're in the same area, we do live on other sides of the country.
That's true.
But who knows? I don't know. We actually don't know the next time we'll see each other.
Yeah, we need to do like a Dice Tower team meal over Zoom or something.
I have not done a meal over Zoom yet. I think I'd find that weird.
What are you eating? I got Chinese food.
This is delicious. Let me try a piece of that cake. Well, no. All right. But that's not Richie. Richie's question is, he says, I used to pick up any game on Kickstarter that had a cooperative mode. He says, there was a time when there wasn't many co-ops. I know that that's true in my head, Richie, but I can't remember it. But anyhow, he says he feels like many games are offering cooperative mode for marketing purposes, even though many of them are subpar as a co-op. And what do you think of this trend? And he says, I played enough now that I did find my own top 10 of games that aren't cooperative but have good cooperative modes. Could you guys make such a list? We all know Orleans would be number one on both your lists.
Yeah, Richie knows us.
Well, I don't know if it would be number one on my list, but if it was on my list, it might be number one of one. I'm sorry. I still lean towards that if a game is competitive, I don't want to play it cooperative and vice versa. And when a game brags that it's both, it really bugs me.
Yeah,
because I feel like one of the games is a lesser. Orleans isn't even like that. It's an expansion that makes it cooperative. It's a fun expansion. I'll play it once in a while, but I'd rather play Orleans competitively any day of the week.
Yeah, I don't really think it's a trend, but I guess this falls under the same thing as adding a solo mode when, it wasn't necessarily designed that way. Just because the crowd is clamoring for a solo mode or the crowd is clamoring for a cooperative mode, making a game that wasn't originally that fit into that hole is not necessarily good. Other than Orleans, I can't really think of one that I feel is successful in that regard. Although I will say that I often look for a cooperative mode in the games because I like co-op games and it's easier to get my kids to play those. So like Stop Thief. I like the co-op mode there. In fact, I do. And so now I'm now contradicting myself because I think I like the co-op, either the co-op or the one versus many mode more than the standard competitive mode in Stop Thief.
Wait. Stop Thief. I thought you were saying Can't Stop. I was like, there's a cooperative mode in that?
No.
You can't stop? And if there was, Eric, would you join me?
No. Tom would be the traitor in that one.
Eric would be like, stop,
Tom.
You can't make me stop. What's the name of the game? Read it.
Yeah. So I guess I have a list of two. Stop Thief and Orleans. Istvan from Hungary says, I remember you discussing a topic a while back where Tom talked about Twilight Struggle, and there was a card that maybe kicks out the communist player from Japan. My question is similar. How do you teach a game to new players where detailed knowledge of the pieces gives you an advantage? I've been introduced to Race for the Galaxy by my colleague who totally destroyed me about 5 or 6 times in a row. He taught me all the rules of the game, but since I've never played the game before, some tips or hints on what to look out for during the game would have been really helpful, and I'm sure the overall experience would have been much better as well. As a different example, I've taught Star Realms to new players, where I also let them know what each faction is good at, and also some powerful cards that can turn the tides of battle. What do you think about the tough love way of teaching?
I think it's garbage. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, I always use this example, but I'm not traumatized by it, but I still remember as a kid, I had a friend who invited me over to his house to play video games and just proceeded to trounce me at all of them. And I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And he'd say, you'll figure it out. I hated that. I hated it.
Yeah.
I would rather say, hey, just so you know, you're going to go to this spot. I just want you to know there's a card in the game that's going to let me counter that. Why would you not say that sort of thing? And unless the person says, I just want to find everything out. If they insist on it, fine. If they don't want to know stuff. I just have never run across someone like that. Usually people are like, oh, thanks. Because otherwise you make their game unfun. You're like, you did that. Did you know there's an earthquake card? Boom. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
How is that fun for anybody?
Yes. Unless you are really into that gotcha sort of mode. And it sounds like your friend with the video games.
If it's your brother, I will accept it.
Yeah. Now, I will often, if I'm in this situation, and I know, and this only works really well if you know the game well, and as you're teaching it, and can say, all right, so there's this deck of cards, and it has lots of powers in it. There are 3 that I want to highlight because you need to know they're in the deck. What was it? Star Wars Epic Duels had Darth Vader, and he had a card that was like an insta-kill if it came up in a particular circumstance. And whenever Vader was on the board, I had to say, all right, just so everyone knows, Vader has these 2 copies of this card in his deck, and if he gets them and the situation is right, it will insta-kill you. Just so you know, it's a possibility. So either don't let that situation come up or know the risks you're taking in doing so.
Right.
That's the kind of thing you need to do that. And you don't need to make a huge deal about it. But if there are those super powered events in a deck, everyone should know they exist. What I'll often say, if it's a more vague situation, is saying there's lots of cards in here that will counter the stuff that you're trying to do. Like many of the cards that you think are really cool, there is a counter for them in the decks, just so you know. There's one game I'm specifically thinking of, Quartz. That's it, the dwarf mining game. There's a bunch of, I steal your gem or I swap a gem with you, a forced trade sort of thing. And for almost every one of those, there is a counter card, which is good to know because maybe you don't have those in your hand at the beginning. And it's good to say, so a lot of those cool cards, it's possible that they can be countered. Know that that's a possibility and move on.
What if you're playing a game with a famous designer and you're about to play a card that's going to help you? And you're like, wait a minute, you say to this designer, does this game have counter cards? And that designer says it does not.
Okay.
And then you play the card and they immediately counter it and then laugh at you because they lied to you about their own game. I feel like that shouldn't happen.
No.
But I'll be better and I won't call Eric Lang out on the show.
I was going to say, what did Eric Lang do to you? But I didn't actually want to call him out, but you did. So
right. No, we're not. We're not going to say Eric Lang on the show. So it could have been any designer, actually.
It could have been anybody. Boy.
Yeah. Now, I will say sometimes this comes up when nobody knows the game. We're all playing for the first time.
Sure.
And there's like event cards or something. And I'm like, let's just see what happens. If someone at the table insists on wanting to know all the event cards, do you allow that? So this actually came up in a game that I was playing. So we were playing a stock market game. Mm-hmm. And the stock price could go up or down on the last turn. This really affected the game. I was wondering, should I buy it now or should I gamble that the stock will go down on the last turn? And there's an event card that made the price go up or down. And I thought, well, we're only using one of the event cards. Can I look at the other event cards just to kind of, I don't know which, I don't know if it goes up or down. I don't know all the cards. I'll look at the other ones and see what the ratio is. And another player said, you can't do that.
Because if you knew what was in the deck, you could eliminate all the other cards.
Well, sure, I didn't know it was in deck, but they didn't even want me to get any kind of idea on it because we hadn't been doing that the whole game. And I agreed. I agreed.
No,
so
I agree.
I didn't. However, once it was over, I now know on that turn, there is a 1 out of 4 chance it will go down. It's probably going to go up. I know that now for the future.
Yeah.
But when everybody is in the game together for the first time, I think it's okay to have event cards happen and you'd be like, that was my strategy. Yeah, well, that event card happened, but none of us knew that was going to happen. So I feel like it's okay then.
When it's brand new for the table, I'll often say, because I'm teaching the game, I've read the rules, but we haven't actually played it yet. I haven't memorized the deck. I'll say that, it's events. It's going to do stuff to prices or pieces or whatever. Do you want to go through them, or do we make it a surprise for everyone? And usually the response is, let's make it a surprise for everyone.
I agree, but I think the people at the table want to know. Usually, sometimes there's a lot of games that have like half good, half bad, or maybe most of them are bad. It's at least good to know kind of what the general gist is. Like, oh, these are half good, half bad. So if a couple bad ones come out, you're like, well, the next one should probably be good.
Yeah. Which is one reason I love when games tell you the distribution of stuff. Say it's a deck of cards numbered 1 through 7. Knowing how many of each value are in the deck is useful information. So when somebody's like, how many 8s are in the deck? You're like, well, there were 5 8s in the deck.
Yeah.
That's fine. I like that.
All right. Andy says, not all emails make the cut for the show, and the ones that don't end up in a nebulous black hole.
Ooh, well, is that in your closet?
It's a folder in Gmail, but anyhow, I call it nebulous black hole. Anyway, he says, if a person was writing questions with the intent of getting one on a show, I imagine they would spam you with questions until one sticks. But if the person was writing with the intent of getting an answer, I imagine they would give up after a few of them were sent in with no response. Would it be better to retire questions at dicetower.com and have all questions posted to the Board Game Geek Guild? That way people get their questions answered, and the good questions can be used in your Q&A segment. Or maybe you can send pre-generated responses to emails such as 1. Thank you for your question. It will be answered in a future podcast. 2. Thank you for your question. It did not make the cut for the show, but we can copy it to our BGG Guild and you'll find an answer there. 3. Thank you for your question. It did not make the cut for the show, but if you post it to the Guild or Facebook page, it can be answered there. So on one, we do it. On the other, they do it. Or 4. Thank you for your question, but it cannot be taken seriously. Therefore, your question will not be answered anywhere.
Ooh, can I read that one? Thank you for your question, but it cannot be taken seriously. Therefore, your question will not be answered anywhere. Thank you.
Man, that's your hateful voice.
I want to do these.
Okay, so the reason I'm putting this on the show is because Andy is correct. You're right. Here's what I do. When someone sends me a question, I look at it and go, oh, yeah, that'll probably be good for the show, maybe. I'm not sure. And I stick it in a folder. And then when it's time to put the show notes together, I go to that folder and I just start pulling them out. And sometimes when I look at them, I'm like, yeah, we've already got that question. And I just say, no, that's not going in the show. And I go to the next question. So you're right. A lot of questions do go to the nebulous black hole. So I will, starting now, from you hearing this, if you send me a question, you should get a response where I'll say, this will be answered in a future podcast. I might say it may be answered in a future podcast. Or I might say, unfortunately, this is not one that we'll get to on the show, but you can answer it in the Board Game Geek Guild or whatever. If you do not get a response from me, say within, please wait, like 48 hours, then that means I didn't get the question. And you can send it in. So I'm going to do that, Andy. Good idea there. We can't answer all the questions, and I have no problem with you sending the question to me and posting it on the Guild or in the Facebook group. That's fine.
Sure.
I can't... I read every comment on our YouTube channel, I think. I try to. I read everything that's posted in our Guild. The Facebook group, I read a lot of it, but not all of it. There's a lot posted in Facebook. So you'll get a lot of good answers, hopefully. Thanks, Andy.
Cool. Jared says, real U.S. money is printed on a special treated mixture of linen and cotton. Other countries print their banknotes on special thin plastics. Would you enjoy a game with paper money if it used one of these materials instead of just regular cheap paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I just said this the other day when I think me and Rado were on our show Corner to Corner, and he likes paper money better than money because he's weird. But I said if paper money was the same quality paper as U.S. money, where it's not indestructible, but it's very difficult to destroy U.S. money.
Yeah.
Then I would like it a lot more. But that paper is also expensive.
Sure. Yes.
There's a reason they make it out of that particular paper.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of Firefly has some very nice looking paper money. And that feels kind of cool, like you're holding. But I don't know what quality of paper, how much more expensive that was versus, say, the Power Grid money, which is the basic paper cheap stuff. But when it actually has some sort of quality material to it, or a plasticky material, a few times I've run into paper-ish money, thin money, that does feel like something more quality than I think it's the quality that bothers us, that it's just like thin paper stock.
I agree, but I still rather use coins, I think. Well, maybe cards. I like card money.
Yeah.
Douglas says that he likes board and tabletop gaming. Shocker. He says it's a perfect hobby because he enjoys it in many ways. He loves getting games to the table. He loves curating his collection, upgrading components, organizing boxes, and researching new purchases. Sometimes he'll pull out an LCG or card game just to build decks and experience. That is a hobby that also keeps him better connected to his wife and kids. They're developing a real interest in tabletop games, and they like playing games and watching reviews together. And his kids like my hats and blah, 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 blah. He says, I fully recognize that not everyone enjoys all aspects of the hobby. So he likes everything: playing, collecting, organizing, researching, experimenting. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm guessing fortunate in that regard, which leads me to my question. Besides actually playing games, what board game adjacent activity do you enjoy the most? And how about the least?
Oh, so like of the stuff he's talking about, the collecting.
Well, just anything that has something to do with board games. I know the least, Eric, is reading rule books. I know some people love that. I know some people like highlight their books and underline them and stuff. And I'm like, just let me get through this.
I think I like the organizing within the box. I like figuring out how I'm going to get all the components in. Sure. What? Why?
Said the geek.
Yes. I really like for games that need it to get one of those Plano boxes and figure out how I'm going to get all the components in here and organize them. And, if I'm going to take the leap and ditch whatever the basic insert is, and I'm not going the route of, I enjoy the route of the third-party inserts as well, finding a way to organize them and fit them all back in the box or get an expansion to fit into the box. And that's cool. What I need to do is extend that to organizing the boxes themselves and figuring out where they all fit, because I haven't done that very well.
Okay, for me, it's very obvious. I mean, it's my job. I like talking about board games. I like the whole, making lists, and I love making top 10 lists. I could do it all day long. I love that aspect. I like talking about board games. In fact, I like that part almost more than I like actual playing the games. I do remember back when I played collectible card games, I think I enjoyed making the decks more than I enjoyed actually playing the games. But that part of my life is over to some degree. I do love playing games, don't get me wrong. It's such a fun experience, but I do like this extra stuff too. It's just, I like talking about games.
Sure. Last question from Ben. When I play Architects of the West Kingdom, my game group does not greatly utilize the mechanic of rounding up others' workers and sending them to prison. Most times they round up their own workers when they need them. I think this is an important mechanic of the game, and so I do a fair share of incarcerating. But I can't stay on top of wrangling everyone's meeples, so they end up generating large resource engines and constructing many buildings, and I ultimately wind up losing the game. How do you deal with players who go against the spirit of a game? Should I just join their non-confrontational playstyle? This could be akin to an inexperienced player messing up the strategies of others by taking suboptimal turns. This got me thinking about the need to adapt strategies based on the way people are playing. What are some good games you've seen this in?
Okay, so this is an interesting thing here. I'm not sure that you have to round up other people in Architects of the West Kingdom. I definitely have played with groups who barely do it, and the game still went pretty well. I get what he's saying. I mean, this is an interesting question here because I've definitely played games like, let's use a real common one, King of Tokyo. You can play King of Tokyo where people barely beat each other up. They just try to get points.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've run into that where nobody did it, but I'm having a hard time thinking of an exact game, but I know I played games before where there's like a big part of the game that can happen and people just don't do it. It's usually has something to do with like attacking each other.
Yeah.
which is what he's mentioning here. And there are some groups who just don't like attacking each other very much. Architects of the West Kingdom has, I'm not Architects, I'm sorry, Raiders of the North Sea has a lot of take that cards in it. You don't have to play those cards to play this game. You can ignore them completely. And I've definitely played the game with groups who completely do that. And I play with groups who really get into it. I don't know that it has negatively affected a game too much for me. You know, in a sense where he says, I don't know that the spirit of the game, rounding people up, workers and sending in prison, the spirit of the game could be not doing that.
Yeah.
I just imagine that if you do that, if you round up someone's group and then you take them to prison and get all that money and they lose that really nice thing that they were doing on the board, I feel like that's on them. Besides, if they don't round up their people, they're going to get stuck on the board. They have to go round up their own groups, which means they're going to have a group at the prison itself eventually. And then you can go round up that group of people.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of stuck. It's entertaining. I don't know. I feel like, yes, there are games that are fragile. And yes, I hate when people play against the spirit of a game. I'll still always remember a moment where I was playing a competitive game and it said something like, if there's a tie, no one will win. But a tie was almost impossible. And two players were like, you know what? Forget everything else. Let's make this game tie. And I was like, that is not how the game plays.
You're doing it wrong.
This was like almost 20 years ago, just to clarify. But yes, I remember that distinctly.
Yeah. I mean, to Ben's point about newer players playing suboptimally, I often see that as part of the challenge. You know, if you're used to playing with the same group over and over, you can sort of get into a groupthink situation. This is the way it should be played. And adding some new blood into the mix can be a neat challenge. There is the pitfall of when that speed bump, that hiccup, affects one player or two players more than the rest. So I guess the story is always Puerto Rico, where one player not realizing how their action can either advantage or severely disadvantage the person to their left can be a detriment to the other players or a huge boon to the other players. But I think that's part of the challenge when you're playing with different groups of people. You can't count on people playing the same way all the time.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that is questions. That's an interesting question, though. I would like, I know some people said, I hate when you throw things back into the group. But listen, I would like to hear about games where this can be a problem. Me and Z were just talking about that today when we were talking after we recorded something, and we were talking about games that are fragile, you know, like that. A game that's really good, but it's fragile because a player could mess the game up if they wanted to for other people. That's an interesting thing. Yeah. Alrighty.
Yeah. Well, I really dislike it when that messing the game up for everybody else is intentional. Like when somebody decides, I'm gonna tank this for some reason.
Yes, but that's a people problem. I don't blame the game in that case.
Yeah.
That is definitely a people problem.
My son will sometimes do that. If he's in a mood, and he'll start, when he starts asking questions like, so how do we reach the end game? How does this end? And when he asks that in like turn 2, I know there's going to be trouble. Like,
it's a dangerous game.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you that. He's like, so if I just keep taking this action over and over again, the game's going to be over. No, don't do that. That's not how the game ends. Time for a top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USAopoly, at theop.games.
All right. Well, you know, speaking of the feedback we got from our survey, a lot of people said they liked the alphabet list, and a lot of people said they did not necessarily care for them, but I think more people like them than not, and the fact is, we're not going to stop now. But hopefully the fact that we do a different one. The thing I like about these is I know we always talk about games that you may not have heard of before. It happens with almost every other letter.
Yeah. We have to reach a little farther into the back catalog to fill up the alphabet list.
Well, we'll see what happens next time in a month when we do Q.
I'm terrified.
Q will be interesting. I'm not terrified at all. But I will say that P was not that difficult to make, and Eric has several games on his list that I like a lot, and I would have considered if I did not already have filled my list with other slightly better games for me. And Eric's list is not as bad as it often is.
Oh, well,
he only
that's
has
high
one
praise.
boring game on it.
Excellent. Oh, which one's that going to be?
So let's get that one out of the way.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Number 10.
Number 10 is part of the two-player Cosmos line. Perry Rodin, the Cosmic League. It's a two-player pick-up and deliver game with a cool mechanism where when you deliver something, the card actually, so you may deliver like 3 of one type of good, and you get to keep one of them as a score, and then the others flip over, and they have different goods on the back, thereby making them another delivery you have to make. And the system just keeps getting smaller and smaller as you deliver the goods in the game. You have to deal with gravity, you upgrade your ship. Pretty cool pick up and deliver. Perry Rodin, The Cosmic League, number 10.
Yeah, don't go hunting your way for this one, folks. It's not as good. Eric is attached to this one for whatever reason.
Space.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad game,
Space.
but it's a little boring.
Space.
Space is not a good game. Okay. My number 10 is a game that came out last year, actually, and it's an economic game called Pipeline. Pipeline is a game in which you are buying and selling oil, but you're also creating this little cool pipeline in front of you, connecting these different colored pipes in various ways. So you're buying tiles to put in front of you to form as long of different colored pipes as you can. And I love the mix of those two things. It's kind of like playing a little Metro, but then also have a somewhat involved economic game on top of it. I just love the combo. So I like Pipeline. I don't think, Eric, you've played this one yet.
I have not. No, I've seen it in action, but I have not had a chance to sit down and play.
Well, that's my number 10, Pipeline.
Number 9.
My number 9 is going to show up.
Before you do your number 9, it's the winners of the contest.
Oh, wow, you weren't kidding. We are just going to jump in there, aren't we?
That's true. Okay, here's the deal, folks. I realized suddenly I did not get names from the people who won the contest. I only have emails.
Okay.
And I'm slightly hesitant to read the emails on the show. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to read you the first 6 letters.
Oh.
Which should give you, now granted, there might be more than one person, but if the first 6 letters of the email aren't, are the same as somebody else, you still have like a 50% chance or something. So congratulations to our 3 winners. The first one is Ravens. That's Ravens.
Ravens, yep.
That's the first 6 letters, so there might be, I don't know.
Yep.
The next one is Aldwin. Actually, I'll give you the first 7 letters. B, Aldwinb. That should
Aldwin
help
B.
narrow that down.
Okay.
And the next one is Spidera. Spidera. So at
these
least
sound
what
like
I'm
code
doing here,
names. You've just given everyone
They
code
do.
names.
Ravens, Aldwinb, and Spidera.
Base to
But anyhow,
Spidera.
I'll send you an email letting you know that you won too. I will wait actually till after this show airs, though, so that there's some suspense.
Set yourself a reminder. Speaking of suspense, my number 9 is going to show up on Tom's list. And so you're going to have to wait a little longer. I'll just be putting this satellite in orbit.
You should have allocated your dice differently. My number 9 is one of the best filler games to come out in the past year. This one's also from last year. Fantastic game, Point Salad. Point Salad is in the category of filler games I always recommend. Before it was No Thanks and For Sale. I'm adding Point Salad to that list. It's a game in which you draft a couple of salad cards or you draft a point card that scores based on the most tomatoes or not having lettuce or whatever. It works really well, and I've played it quite a bit and probably will play it more in the future. Point Salad.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. This is a fantastic, quick filler game, easy to teach and play, and then set up and play again. This was very close to making my list as well.
Number 8.
My number 8, I have to give credit for really getting me into the hobby space. That's the Pokemon trading card game.
Gotta catch 'em all.
Yes, indeed. Played this in college, and that led me to game stores where I then found more designer releases and started playing more and more quality games. And Pokemon is still going on as a trading card product. It still has leagues and events and all sorts of stuff. New kids, new players getting involved all the time. I've introduced it to my children, and they still ask to play. So I got to give Pokemon credit. Number 8, the Pokemon trading card game.
That's not going to be on my list, just as a spoiler.
Spoiler.
My number 8 is on Eric's list. I swear every time he just beats me out a little bit.
I am the brightest.
Number 7.
My number 7 is, I guess, a little bit of a cheat because it is just now coming out, and that is Project L.
Is it just now coming out?
That is the last word I got, is that the production copies are finally hitting the backers of Project L, which is
I want the expansion for this.
I want to see it too. It is a puzzle-solving engine building game where you take little plastic pieces and upgrade them and add them to your puzzles, draft new puzzles. This one, I wavered a little bit because it's not fully available yet, but this is such a great game. Every time I've had an opportunity to play it with new groups, I have taught it. You, Tom, mentioned how Point Salad has been your go-to filler. This is a little longer than filler weight, but it's certainly, you can play this game in about half an hour. This has been my go-to teach. A few months ago at Dice Tower West, I taught this game a ton of times. When people will be like, I want something from the library, can you teach us a game? We'd be like, have you played Project L? We're going to play Project L right now. Great game, and it's my number 7.
I agree. This is a solid game. I am anxious to see the final product too. All right, my number 7, I am not Z Garcia, so my entire list does not start with the word pandemic. So there is just one entry. My number 7 is Pandemic Legacy. You're like, which one, first or second? And the answer is yes. Pandemic Legacy was such a great experience. It's not higher on my list because it's kind of hard for me to, I don't play it anymore. I finished both 1 and 2. I'm looking forward to 3 coming out. And it's kind of a weird game to talk about right now, right? Yeah. Because, there's a real life pandemic. At the same time, I haven't noticed that too many people get bothered by it, which I thought, it's actually selling really well and everything. But there's still a moment in the first game that is just, I'll never forget that moment in a game. Yeah. And the second game, while it didn't have necessarily that moment, had some really cool mechanisms and things to it.
Yep.
So, love Pandemic Legacy, my number 7.
I agree.
Number 6.
Moving on to my number 6, it is Paperback, the deck building, word building game from Tim Fowers. I love this one. I played a lot of games of this in the app. And also, I'm trying to get my youngest to play this more so we can work on his spelling. I think that would be good. I have to come up with some sort of handicap rules so that I'm hampered a little bit, but I think there are ways to do that in Paperback. I love the art design. I like the system of being rewarded for creating large words, making it all work. Number 6, Paperback.
Yeah, Paperback was definitely one I considered. My number 6 is the very nice and pretty but mean game Photosynthesis.
Angry trees.
In which you are planting trees and then blocking other people's trees so you can get all the sunlight. Mm-hmm. It's really a cool game. Mm-hmm. It's a fun game as the sun rotates around and you use action points to plant trees, grow trees, make them bigger and score points with them. But don't get, know the truth. It is a mean game, but I love it. It's scientific and fun. Photosynthesis.
Yeah, this is another one that came very close to making my list. It is cool. And that mechanism of the sun rotating. So you may have a great position from one sun angle, but as soon as the sun passes that large spruce in the corner, you're doomed. Very cool.
There's one thing I did learn from this game is that I had always been under the impression that the Earth revolved around the sun. Now I know that actually the sun revolves around the Earth.
Oh yeah.
So I learned some science from this game. Yeah. Very handy. Mm-hmm. Very handy.
No comment.
Number 5.
I'm trying to get an email.
My number
from somebody.
My number 5 is Pueblo, the abstract 3D building game where you are trying to hide your own pieces from this observer that walks their way around the board, but you still have to use those pieces. You have to build alternately with the neutral pieces and your own, so you're trying to hide behind other players and build higher, but that's worth more points. You don't want points. It's a cool challenge and frustrating when you can't get that. You wish you could just twist the piece to work the other direction. Very cool game. Pueblo, number 5.
Man, when is this game going to come back in print? I don't know. I hope it comes back in.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. It's almost something I want to make a note of for a future top 10 list.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good one. My number 5 is another game from last year. This is the last one from last year, and that is Paladins of the West Kingdom. Earlier in the show, we talked about Architects of the West Kingdom. Paladins is the sequel. It is the heavier game of the two, for sure. It is a worker placement game, but what color the workers are matters as you place them in certain spots on the board. It's a point salad type thing. It's yummy goodness and deep and involved. Paladins of the West Kingdom.
I haven't had a chance to play Paladins yet.
Number 4.
My number 4, I've mentioned a few times in the last few episodes. That is the Pathfinder Adventure card game, which has seen a bit of a resurgence in my house due to the kids wanting to play their characters from the beginning. They are letting me play again, which is good.
Oh, I sent him some money.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Your dad keeps calling me and crying. Please let him play the game.
No. I mean, they wanted to play up to the point where I had stopped. And we're now at the point we're playing 6-player games of this, 6-character games. Because not only did they let my 2 characters rejoin them as they got to where I was, but they both wanted second characters as well. So now we have 2 characters each. And that is a very different game. But I still adore this system, how that you start culling cards from the system and getting more and more cool stuff as you work your way through the adventures, and how some of the adventures are very different from others and have just a deck of cards can have these cool mechanisms and feel like different adventures. The Pathfinder ACG, my number 4.
My number 4 was Eric's number 9, and that's Pulsar 2849. And this game still astounds me that it did not get more love. I think maybe because it doesn't look as good as I wish it could.
No, and the name doesn't quite stand out that much.
But man, do I love this game. This is a game where you draft dice. You then use these dice for various things. One, fly a spaceship around the board. Just find cool stuff. Mm-hmm. Another, build these Pulsar... What are they called?
Gyrodyne?
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? You're building stuff. And then also moving up in technology, getting different special abilities that you can do. Every time you play this game, you want to do like 80 things, and you can do 3.
Yeah.
But you can go in very different directions, and every time I'm done playing it, I feel both satisfied that it was a really fun game, satisfied with what I've done, and irritated because I feel like I should have done better. And I want to come back and play it again.
Yep. It has so many possibilities that there's that race of exploration because you sort of tag these star systems, and getting there first can be very lucrative. But that's just one way to spend your dice. You can be moving up that tech track and taking the bonuses that other people want. And there's a lot of race aspect to this game that keeps that tension moving in this dice drafting. Very solid game.
Number 3.
My number 3 is Potion Explosion, a game that is done very well with friends and family. I love the visceral feeling of that dice hopper. We were on Dice Tower tonight talking about game gadgets last week, and this was one that came up because it's such a distinctive piece of hardware that keeps these marbles hopping around and creating combinations and then charging up your potions, which then you can use to create more combinations of marbles and getting those cascades moving. It feels very satisfying when you get this game a-moving. Potion Explosion, my number 3.
My number 3, one of the classic games of all time, and that's Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is an entertaining game in which you pick an action. Everyone else gets to do the action, but you get to do something special for picking the action. As you bring in colonists to Puerto Rico, build buildings, plantations, it is a lot of fun. I will say that this plays better with people who know how to play it. It's a game that, if you play with someone good, they're going to whoop you probably. And I found an app for this on the iOS that I played, and I hate it.
Oh, no.
I hate it. But the game itself, Puerto Rico, is really fun. You can go watch me hate on it online if you want to watch me play it live. I was very saddened by it. So that's Puerto Rico, my number 3.
Yeah.
The board game, not the app.
Puerto Rico it's solid. It's one of those that I appreciate for its landmark nature at this point. It's not one that I really go to. I think I'd rather play New Frontiers, the Race for the Galaxy game that has much more similarity to it. I like that one better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Number 2.
My number 2 was Tom's number 8, and that's Power Grid. Lovely economic game. Another one that has sort of a race aspect as you're trying to build into areas to get the cheap locations before your opponents do. But building too quickly can often put you in a bad position as far as turn order goes. So mitigating that, messing with the resource market, buying out stuff that you know your opponents want, switching to a resource for your power plants that has low costs and no one else is in. So many moving parts in Power Grid and all those expansion maps that have extra rules that make it a different experience each time you play. Oh, I adore Power Grid. Number 2.
I think even without the expansion maps, this would still make my list.
Yeah.
Just the base game is strong enough because the map, you never use every region on the map. So different regions will always shake things up. And the power plants don't come out in the same order. If I was only going to get one expansion, I think I would get the alternate set of power plants just because that's kind of fun to see which ones will come out.
Yep.
But if the maps don't hurt either. I especially like the Korean map a lot. But yeah, Power Grid was my number 8. Eric's number 2. My number 2, one of the greatest games of all time, Pitch Car.
Yeah.
I talk about this so many times. It's made so many lists because it's just that fantastic. And you know what? I think this will be the year I played the least Pitch Car I've ever played.
Yeah. You can't play that over
You know what I
Zoom.
should do? I should make a Pitch Car. What's the machine's called? What's the ridiculous machine that you do to
Rube
solve a
Goldberg
simple
device?
task? Yeah, Rube Goldberg, right. Rube Goldberg pitch car, where I flick it and then it just goes down the track and then knocks over something and eventually goes all the way downstairs and throws a glass of water on one of my kids. And I'm like, cheer. I don't know. That sounds like a lot of work.
It does sound like a lot of work. I think that's sort of the definition of a Rube Goldberg device, is it's a lot of work to do something very simple. But I look forward to it. Now that you've promised everyone, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
My Rube Goldberg machine's going to be like 10 seconds long. I flick it, knocks over a board, pushes a ball rolls in a hole. I'm like, good enough.
I'm out.
That lazy man's Rube Goldberg.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1, I didn't mention when Tom talked about Pandemic Legacy because I went with Standard Pandemic. I'm just naming the system as my number 1. I still play.
What a cheater!
I know.
Cheater.
I know. I really like the dice version as well, but I'm going to stick with the vanilla. It still comes out. Playing with the kids, I will pull out the app sometimes. Playing with the family. Pandemic is such a fantastic co-op game, and one that still hits the table. My number 1 P game. Game starting with P.
That's better, I think.
What are
I don't
you,
know if I'd
12?
call something my number 1 P game. Yes. All right. Anywho, my number 1 is just coming out now in its 2nd edition. I think it's being released from the Kickstarter, and that's Project Elite. I'm excited to get the brand new version of it, but I like the original one. This real-time game where you're standing there blowing aliens away as they try to storm you. Think Starship Troopers, aliens just swarming. It's a cooperative real-time game, which is so fun, so entertaining. So that's my number 1, Project Elite.
Cool.
You might wonder what the people's choices were.
I do wonder what
Let's
the
see.
people's choices were.
We got all of them except 1. Here we go.
Okay.
Number 10, Pitch Car. Number 9, Photosynthesis. Number 8, Paladins of the West Kingdom. Number 7, Potion Explosion. Number 6, Point Salad. Yummy, yummy. Number 5, this is the one we didn't just say, is Patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like Patchwork as much as the rest of the world does. I think it's okay. But I get why people like it.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar situation. I enjoyed it, but it's not one that I'm dying to introduce to everyone.
Number 4, Puerto Rico. Number 3, Power Grid. Number 2, Pandemic Legacy, Season 1 specifically. And number 1, Pandemic.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to start doing this because I find this sort of thing interesting. Hang on, let me go over here and grab this window, which I forgot where it was. Let's see what some other choices that the people said. We'll go past 10.
Oh, okay then.
Pulsar 2849, number 11. Pillars of the Earth, number 12.
Oh.
That was on my list and then got knocked off. It was close. Paperback, number 13. Pandemic Legacy Season 2, 14.
Okay.
Pathfinder made 15. Pandemic Iberia made 16. Parks made 17. I actually thought Parks would be higher into people's choice. I finally had a chance to play Parks. It was enjoyable. Nice gateway game.
Yeah.
Number 18. This is a public domain game. What is it, Eric?
Public domain poker.
It's actually poker. But yes, poker. Number 18. Number 19, Paper Tales. Number 20, Pioneer Days. Number 21, Pax Pamir. Number 22, Port Royal. Number 23, Predaporter. Number 24, The Pursuit of Happiness. And 25, Planet.
Oh, wow.
Those are all really good games.
neat.
I think I'm going to read all 25 in the future.
Okay.
That way we can hear a lot more good choices.
I'm looking forward to
from everybody
Q
else.
and X and...
Yeah, you know what? I wonder if we'll even get to 25 with Q. That's super interesting. I haven't thought about that. But next week is not that. I don't remember. I don't even know what the topic is for next week. But you can go vote in these, folks. Actually, did you put it in the description?
I haven't yet, but
No.
we could certainly. In fact, I think it might be the one I alluded to earlier, and I will correct myself in a second if I'm wrong. But I think it's games that break Vassal's law.
Nothing breaks my law. Okay, but that is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, you can vote on that, and we'll talk about those in the next one. You just go to dicetower.com to the top 10 link and vote there.
Oh, it's not.
Whew,
I'm
what we
wrong.
talked about.
I'm wrong. It's going to be
What is
sports
it?
games, non-racing. So we did our racing games 2 weeks ago. We'll be doing non-racing sports games. The games that break Vassal's law is way off in the future. I must have just gotten really nervous about that one. Where is that one? Oh, boy. That's like
I don't
September.
know.
We're going to talk about that in September.
All right. Well,
The preview. There's
Alrighty,
one up
folks,
here that
I
says live
appreciate-
from Dice Tower East, though. We're going to have to fix that.
yeah. Well, we still may do it live from Dice Tower Summer Spectacular.
Okay.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll figure it out. All righty, folks. We really appreciate you all coming on and having fun time with us. We're going to shut down the show now, but we hope to hear from you. If you have any questions, send them to us at questions@dicetower.com, and I'll try to send you a response that says, this question's so bad, no one will ever answer. Such a weird thing. All right.
Thank you for
Until
writing.
next time.
We will never answer this.
Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell,
I'm Eric Summerer.
and you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 661, was recorded on May 28th, 2020. Mandy and Suzanne are back next week, and then in 2 weeks, Tom and I take the field for our top 10 sports games. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassal.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Roy Cannaday, Mike Delisio, and Rob Seary. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Ms. Winfrey's most ardent supporters, brought to you by the Fandom of the Oprah. And you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at dicetower.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at tom@dicetower.com or eric@dicetower.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Games Insider, Out of Game, The Broken Meeple, The Game Pit, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The D6 Generation, Ludology, and Board Game Breakfast at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So here's what you have to do, Tom. You have to build a pitch car robot that can be controlled via Zoom. So when it's somebody's turn, they, you position, and then they can steer the robot to flick their disc and shoot it off in whatever direction that needs to be shot. I think you could probably 3D print it. You can 3D print anything these days, and then.
Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can.
So I'll be waiting for that like next week, right? Got it. Let's make it happen.